this little thing we're calling the 2-minute drill. So let your friends know, remind yourself that we're starting things about 2 minutes early. We're going to give you some announcements and info for you. All right, so my name is Stephanie, and I want to welcome you all to Jefferson City Christian Church. If you are techie and you'd like to connect with us on your phone, download YouVersion's Bible app and find today's event from the menu. It should be called Jeff City Christian Church. You can connect with us there. You can sign up for stuff on that app. Tips on how to do that are in the New Here brochure and a little bit on your bulletin there. I want to tell you a few things about some events coming up you may be interested in. I think we've got a slide for it. This Saturday, we'll have 2 opportunities for you to have some fun with folks in our community. We're offering a couple of different block party type events. The Laurel Hills neighborhood will be throwing a block party on Saturday from 1 to 4 p.m. with games, snacks, and a whole block's worth of fun. Even if this isn't your neighborhood, you're invited to be a part of it, and I'm sure if this is your neighborhood and you wanted to get involved, you could absolutely do that. I think John and the Purdums and several families in that neighborhood are kind of working that out. There's also going to be a street festival on Main Street that same day, Saturday, from 4 to 8 p.m. Several of our folks that live in that area, including myself, will be participating in this event that's put on by Carson Newman. We got to partner with them to hopefully help this event be a huge success for our community. If you've ever been to Old Time Saturday, it's going to be a lot like that. There will be vendors and crafts and things, but there will also be some free things for you and your kids and family to participate in. I would love to see you out there because I'll be face painting. I'd love to paint your faces. So this is part of our Love Where You Live. We wanted to just create something and partner with something that was already in existence just to help love on our communities. We'd love to see you out there. Again, if you're interested in participating more than just attending, let John know for the Laurel Hills or let me know for that College Street Festival. That's really all I've got for announcements. So we're going to jump in with a little bit of worship. If you would, stand while you do that. Turn to someone behind you and in front of you and shake some hands and say good morning.
Hey, Tim. Tim.
Would you sing with us?
I believe in the sun. I believe in the risen one. I believe I overcome by the power of His blood. Amen. Amen. I'm alive because He lives. Amen. Amen. Let my song join the one that never ends because He lives. I was dead in the grave. I was covered in sin and shame. I heard mercy call my name. He rolled the stone away. Amen. Amen. I'm alive because He lives. Amen. Amen. Let my song join the one that never ends because He lives.
As we get ready to sing this song together, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it because even if you have been in church a long time, the title is a little unsettling. The title of this song is There is a Fountain Filled with Blood. If you're new to church, that may really be weird. But it's something that I think is important for us to not to overlook, because we see all throughout Scripture, beginning even as early as Genesis, that there's the need for a sacrifice. Because when we sinned, when we fell, when we sinned against God, we needed something to atone, something to cleanse us of those sins. And all throughout the Old Testament, we see that it had to be a death. There had to be blood shed to cover that. We saw the sacrifice of animals, birds, different things throughout the Old Testament that God commanded that they had to do. Thankfully, because of Jesus, we don't have to do that anymore. Because of Jesus' death on the cross, because of the blood that he spilled for us, Revelation says that we have been washed whiter than snow. Doesn't really make sense because you would think it's kind of gross and dirty and definitely not white. But the blood of Jesus has the power to wash us of our sin, to free us of guilt and shame. It provides a way for us to come before the Father without needing someone in the middle, without needing a priest to make a sacrifice for us. We can just go to the Father. Lyrics that I just didn't feel like we could overlook it because the title is a little graphic. So if you would sing along with us. There is a fountain filled with blood.
Plunged beneath that flood.
As I mentioned in introducing that song, of course, we celebrate the story of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection, both through the songs and in a way that some of you may not be used to each week. We take communion, or the Lord's Supper, every week. It'll happen towards the end of the service, and everyone who is a believer is welcome to join us, even if it's your first time here. Just take the bread and juice as they're passed, spend some time in remembrance, and eat whenever you're ready. But before we go into the rest of our service, Melissa's going to give us a little update on Kids Way. So let's give Melissa a warm welcome to the stage. There it is.
Okay. So the next big thing we have coming up in Kids Way is Vacation Bible School. That's going to be happening here at the church, June the 2nd through the 6th from 6 to 8 p.m. If you would like to volunteer to help, you can do that starting today at the table in the foyer. You cannot miss the table. It's a great week. It's a fun week. There's lots of ways to be involved. I really hope that you'll join us. Please turn your attention to the screen.
Me. Couple of things before I begin. First of all, Melissa and I did not plan to wear the same style shirt. It's really weird too, because I can understand it if you both have on a blue shirt or a red shirt. She and I are wearing white shirts with little black dots. And I don't know how that happened, but it happened. So we're just very much in sync this morning. So that's funny. The second thing I need to mention to you before I get going is Ben Price was sitting behind me, and he leaned up just before I came on stage, and he showed me a pin that says Dumpling Baptist Church on it. That's sitting in our pews. Like it was stuffed in the pin holder for our church. So whoever you are, little infiltrator from Dumpling Baptist Church, we are on to you, and we're coming for you, okay? Ben's on the security team. So he finds you, you're out of here. Okay, that's all. Starting a new series today. 2 weeks is all we got for this one before the big day. We got Easter coming up. But just pause for a second and think about where we are in 2019. March is over. Is that not just kind of startling? We are 25% of the way through 2019. A quarter of this year is already by you. And I don't know about you, but that kind of freaks me out just a little bit. But I was thinking about it, and there are a few things that I bet you have done by this point in 2019. So I just want to put a few of these up on the screen. The first thing that I think that you have done by now is you have finally stopped writing 2018 when signing and dating things. Is this right? So you're signing your check or your kids' stuff. You have to scribble out 2018. I think you probably got into 2019 by now. Here's the second thing that I think you've probably done. You no longer trust that warm weather is going to last. Am I right? Even you get on Weather Channel app and you see that 2 weeks ahead it's like all 70 degrees. You're like, no way. Because next week it's going to be freezing again. I'm there too, but I think maybe we're there. That's why I wore my short sleeves today, because I'm hoping and I'm trusting. Thirdly, the third thing that I think that you've probably done by now, you've totally given up your New Year's resolution. Anybody? Anybody in here start off strong? And anybody in here actually still sticking with a New Year's resolution? Nobody. Okay, so we have all given up on our New Year's resolution. Here's the good news, okay? I want to give you a little good news when it comes to particularly that part of the things that we have done. The good news is this. Easter coming up here in a couple of weeks. Easter is like spiritual New Year's, okay? it is the biggest party of the year. It is when we draw a line in the sand and we remember the thing that is the foundation for our faith. It is the biggest picture of Jesus' life, death, and resurrection. It is why we have Christianity. It is the date that sits out there in front of us and we can all look forward to. And so I want us to view it as a spiritual New Year's. And here's something that I'm guessing. I am guessing that spiritually, over the last year, you've put on some spiritual weight. Maybe a little disappointment. You know, the idea that you thought God was going to act a certain way in a situation, and God didn't act that way. Or you thought that maybe you had reached a certain point in your own spiritual life, and then something happened and you realized, I'm not there yet. Maybe it's disappointment. Maybe it's resentment, right? Maybe you have been wronged. Maybe you have been wronged at some point throughout this past year, and you're having a hard time letting that go. This spiritual weight idea, this is not like a critical thing. This is not like a deal where you haven't been doing your job. Sometimes stuff just happens to you, and it impacts your spiritual life. I want you to think about that. If you're taking notes right now, if you've got our little notepad, the handout that we hand out, or if you're kind of taking notes on you, seriously, think about that. Have you put on spiritual weight? Is there something that's heavy on you right now? How is it impacting your life? How is it impacting the conversations that you have with people? How is it impacting your perspective on things? How's it impacting your faith? It's a question that I have for you. I'm betting that most of us in this room can say yes. Over the past year, I probably have put on some spiritual weight. And I want to draw an analogy for you. Check this out. Just like bad physical health can diminish the life that you want. We see this all the time. I mean, I saw this actually last year, or maybe a couple of years ago, at Dollywood. I saw this, and this is not, I'm not being critical of this person, okay, but it was a guy, and he was probably in his mid to upper 30s, and I know that's a time in a life where a lot of us guys, we kind of get out of shape, right? Your career is kind of, you're putting a lot into your career, your family, you're up all the time, you're chasing people around, and so you forget about taking care of yourself. So this guy, he's probably at that time in his life, I'm not being critical, but he probably wasn't in the best shape of his life, okay, and he's going through at Dollywood, you know, Craftsman's Valley. Y'all know where Craftsman Valley is. You go up the hill and you try to get to Blazing Fury. And he has got a stroller he's pushing, okay? So that's probably part of why he's in not the best shape of his life. And he's got like bags hanging off of him, okay? There's like a diaper bag, there's a snack bag, and then a couple more that I don't even know what they were. But he's got bags hanging off of him, and he's behind this stroller, and he's like got the lean going to try to get up this hill. And I'm just like, man, Blazing Fury is not worth it. You know, just watch the bird show, just stay, just pull over, take a break. But he's a guy that because of kind of just where he was in life and maybe he wasn't in the best physical condition of his life, he's going to hate Dollywood. It doesn't matter how great the rides are, how great the shows are. He's going to come back saying, that's the worst place in the world. I don't want to be part of it. Our physical health can impact the way we experience life. And in the same way, your spiritual life can diminish the life that God wants for you. If you're carrying around spiritual weight and it's got you weighted down, it's going to diminish the way you perceive and respond to the kind of things that God wants to do in your life. But here is the good news. The good news is that the resurrection means there is the potential for newness in your life. There is the potential of change. So what I want us to do in these 2 weeks leading up to Easter, when we celebrate this resurrection, this picture of newness that is possible in our lives, I want us to detox, okay? Now, some of you hear that word and you're like, man, my wife made me do that. I do not want to detox. I'm sick of the word, okay? My good news for you is there's no kale involved. There's no funky soups that you got to eat. There is just a recognition, of the deep meaning of the resurrection that I want you guys to hang on to, that I want you guys to remember over the next couple of weeks, so that when we get to that celebration, you're not dragging some stroller and bags and extra weight into the celebration and can't appreciate resurrection and all that it means. I want you to come in there skipping. You're the little girl with like the airbrush t-shirt and the funnel cake running to the wild eagle, okay? I want you to be so happy about that day that we have. And here's a couple of things that I want you, as we start this off, I want you to remember about the resurrection, about the meaning of the resurrection. First of all, the resurrection means lots of different things, but I'm going to give you two. I want to give you two that it means for your life and for our purposes during this. First of all, it means that God can change you, okay? Jesus went throughout his life showing people the power that God has. He showed that God has the power over waves. Okay, he showed that he had the power to stop raindrops when they were falling. He showed that he had the power to multiply food. He showed that he had the power to take diseases away. And in this final act of his earthly life, he shows that God has the power even over death. If there is that kind of power that we see in the resurrection, then God has the power to change you. But if you're struggling a little bit in your spiritual life, you wonder, don't you? You wonder, can God really change this? Can God really do anything about this part of my life? I don't want you carrying that spiritual weight as we move into this celebration. The second thing that the Jesus resurrection means, there's lots of things that it means, like I said, but this is a second thing that I want you to catch is your life today, in this life, on this earth, your life matters. If it is just that we live for a few years and then we die and that's it and there is nothing else, man, just do what you want. Just do what you want. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter the baggage that you carry. It doesn't matter the destruction that you leave, because you're not dealing with it, right? You are moving on. You are dying. That's the end. Poof. It's over for you. So just live what you want. But if the resurrection is true, if this idea that this life isn't all there is, if Jesus was really giving us a picture of what's going to happen to every single one of us, that he died and then he rose again, and the relationships that he had and the things that he taught and the impact of his life he got to experience in the resurrection, then your life matters. Your life is preparation for the next. I'm not saying what you do is what's going to save you or not. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about works saving you and getting you to heaven or hell. What we're talking about is the works that you do in this life, the things that you participate in, the way that you let God prepare your heart and mind will impact your life in the next. Scriptures are very clear about that. Great missionary Paul said that in the next life, every person will receive what is due for them for things done while in the body. So it is going to have impact. So we got to view every bit of this life as preparation for the next. It matters deeply. But man, if your spiritual life is hurting, if you're struggling, let me guess, you're wondering if it matters. Even if you're doing good things, even if you got great things going on, man, does it matter that I wake up early to teach the third grade class on Sundays? Does it matter that I have that sleepless weekend with the middle schoolers and the high schoolers and give my time to that? Does it matter that I give part of my money to this thing called church and other good things? If you're a leader in this church, does it matter that I take on the stress of being a leader in that church? I mean, in the end, does it all really matter? Because listen, there are more fun things to do, right? There are better, more happy things, fun things that you can be doing with your life. You can just go hiking, right? You can have the 7th grade boys small group. I'll take the bears, right? I'll just go head out and do that. And that's going to happen if you wonder if it all matters. But the resurrection says yes. God can change you, and it truly does matter. So with the rest of the time that I have here on this morning, what I want us to do is I want us to go to talking about detoxing. What I think Jesus starts with his disciples, the core of it all. We're going to start with talking about detoxing our heart. and how we do that as we head in over the next couple of weeks. So if you got your Bible with you, open up to Luke chapter 6. I want to scan through here just a little bit. If you've got on the Bible app, open up just the whole chapter of Luke 6. And I know you're going to look at that and you're going to be like, man, is he going to spend the whole, try to go through the whole chapter? I'm not, but I want you to see something with this. Like I want you to absorb a little Bible study, understanding of what this chapter is all about. Luke chapter 6, Luke is one of the biographies written about Jesus. Luke chapter 6 is where there's a big statement going on. Luke, when he was putting this thing together, he chose these stories to string them together for a purpose. And that purpose is to talk about where your heart has got to be if you're going to be one of Jesus' followers. Sometimes when you go into chapters of the Bible, you see the first verse or story or passage, and then you see the last one, and you're like, what connects it all? Because it seems like it doesn't really connect. If you keep praying about it and you keep reading it, there's a connection. Okay, and from beginning to end, chapter 6 of Luke is about the heart. It starts off, again, let's just kind of scan through that. Again, I hope that you can see the whole chapter. But Luke chapter 6, when it starts off with a couple of stories where Jesus, his antagonist, the people that he's always kind of wrestling with, the Pharisees, right? They're always questioning him and arguing with him. It starts off with a couple of stories with Jesus and these people who are often his detractors. And basically what happens with those two stories is that Jesus says, man, you Pharisees, you care more about your traditions than you do people. That's what's happening right there. And he's saying, what is wrong with your heart that you care more about that ritual than you do real people? And so Jesus has like this really sassy moment, which I think is kind of funny, because he's doing this, he's making this point, and he gets this person up in front of everybody. He doesn't do it in secret. He didn't just walk by and tap him. He gets him up right in front of the Pharisees, and he holds up his hand, which has been shriveled for forever and crippled, and he goes, boom. And the man stretches out his hand, and he heals him right in front of the Pharisees, as if to say, it's about people. It's not about the rituals and the traditions that you have. It's about people and God's love for people and God's desire to change people. So then, after that moment, if you keep scanning on down, Jesus then chooses his first disciples. And what's getting ready to happen is Luke is showing us the difference between the Pharisees and people who want to follow Jesus. Okay, that's the connection with these stories. Hey, look at the Pharisees. Look where their hearts are. Now, Jesus chooses his disciples. Now, after that, he takes them away to teach them a few things. So Jesus pulls the disciples away, if you keep scanning on down, and he's going to teach them a few things. It starts off with a little section in your Bible. It might be called blessings and woes. But essentially what's happening right here is Jesus is saying to the disciples, you can't control how people are going to treat you. Okay? You follow me, it ain't going to be easy. But listen, take heart. Every single person who has done the right thing throughout history, every single person who has tried to follow God, it hadn't been easy. And that's what he's saying with that section as he goes through there. Yes, there's lots more that we could dig into, but that's not what this particular sermon is about. So we are going to continue on. What I want you to do is I want you to get to the part that Jesus starts to get into at verse 27. What he's getting ready to do in this message to his disciples, as they are very first beginning, as they are starting out, as he's shaping their hearts, is he's going to say to them, there are two things that have got to happen in your heart if you are going to follow me. There's two things. So let's pick up right there together. Luke chapter 6, verse 27. But to you who are listening, I say, love your enemies, do good to those who hate you. And like right off the bat, don't you hate this already? This is like hard. Do good to those who hate you. Bless those who curse you. I mean, like, it's like when you hear the first few notes of a song that you don't like and you just want to change the station, right? That's kind of how, just being honest, that's how I feel when I start reading this passage. I'm like, let's skip this, okay? Bless those who curse you. Pray for those who mistreat you. If someone slaps you on the cheek, turn to them the other also. Man, this is hard. Jesus didn't teach it like that. He was probably being serious. But I'm reading this and I'm being disappointed. If someone takes your coat, listen to this. If someone takes your coat, do not withhold your shirt from them. What? Give to everyone who asks you, and if anyone takes what belongs to you, don't demand it back. Oh, mercy. And then here's the one we like. Do to others as you would have them do to you. We like that one, right? But let's be honest with you. How many of you, you know that one, do to others as you would have them do to you, but you didn't know it was connected to all that other stuff, right? I mean, be honest. We like that last one because something's in it for us, right? If I treat people this way, then they're going to treat me this way. But that's not what Jesus is saying. He's saying, man, it's going to actually cost you a little something. Full disclosure, man, when I'm teaching my kids, I teach my kids the last verse. The last verse, do not, or do unto others as you would have them do to you. I skipped the first ones. When some kid in third grade steals something from them, I'm like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to set them up. I want you to leave it out on your desk. We're going to bust them. We're going to record them. We're going to send them to the principal. We're going to get them suspended. That's what we do. Now listen, there's truth to the idea that when it comes to our kids, we have to teach our kids their self-worth, right? They have to learn to defend themselves. You don't know how to give worth to other people if you don't have worth in yourself. You don't understand your own self-worth. You won't defend others if you're not someone who has learned to defend yourself. You don't know the value of people. So there's something to that. But this lesson right here ain't for kids. This is big boy stuff. So my conversations with my kids change as they get older. As my kids grow older and something happens to them when they are wronged, it's not all about, hey, let's punish that person who has wronged you. I sit my teenager down and I say, let's talk about why we think that they would do stuff like that. Let's talk about maybe what advantages you have had in life that they haven't. Let's talk about ultimately what we want for them. Is jail the ultimate goal? Maybe it needs to serve a purpose. But that's not ultimately what I want for them. We have big boy conversations about what we do when it comes to people who wrong us. Jesus goes on to explain, read on with me just a little bit in Luke chapter 6. If you love those who love you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. They love those who love them. And if you do good to those who are good to you, what credit is that to you? Even sinners do that. And if you lend to those from whom you expect repayment, what credit is that to you? Even sinners lend to sinners, expecting to be repaid in full. But love your enemies. Do good to them. Lend to them without expecting to get anything back, and then your reward will be great, and you'll be children of the Most High, because the Most High, God, He is kind to the ungrateful and the wicked. Be merciful just as your Father is merciful. And this is hard, isn't it? It's hard to look at this and try to live this out. And I wish I had like some steps to give you, but I don't know that I do. I want to tell you a story. Maybe that will help just a little bit. I want to show you a picture up here. I don't know how many of you know the story of Elizabeth and Jim Elliot. This is Elizabeth Elliot. This is Jim Elliot. Back in the 1950s, Jim was a missionary. And there were these people in Ecuador who were some native people that lived back in the rainforest. And he said, you know what, they've never had the opportunity to hear about Jesus. And so I want to go and give them the story of Jesus. And so Elizabeth says, yeah, Jim, you know what? You're right. They need to hear the story of Jesus. And so she sends her husband along with some of his friends to go reach these native people of the country of Ecuador. And so if you flip onto the next picture, you'll see Jim, and these are some four buddies that he went down. Jim and Nate Saint was the pilot on that trip that they went down. They flew this little plane down to Ecuador. They found a little sandbar on which they could land that plane in the middle of the rainforest down there. They had sought to learn the people's language. They had sought to learn their customs. They wanted more than anything to give them the message of Jesus. And so they spent several days there on this little sandbar, camping out, trying to make contact with his native people of Ecuador. And the mission ended in tragedy. The people came out and they murdered all 5 of the guys who went to take them the story of Jesus. When Jim Elliot was preparing for this mission, his daughter said, hey, Dad, are you going to take a gun? And he said, yeah, I'm going to take a gun. We got to hunt to eat, and if an animal gets, aggressive toward us, we're going to take it out. Yeah, we'll have weapons with us. And she says, no. If those native people get aggressive, if they begin to come at you, are you going to use your gun? And he says, no. Honey, listen. how can I take the life of someone who doesn't know about Jesus and the resurrection to save my own life when I know about Jesus and the resurrection? What kind of amazingly strong heart says that? That's a struggle for me to even wrap my mind around. This is a guy who knows that the resurrection matters. This is a guy who is convinced that this life is not all that there is something else, that what happened to Jesus is a picture of what will happen to him, that there's a story on the other side of the grave, and he is convinced by that. So he says no. And he goes down and he gets killed. After this happens, Elizabeth Elliot begins to talk with the pilot, Nate Saint's wife. They begin to talk and they begin to say, you know what, I don't think this is how it ends. I don't think this is God's ultimate goal for those people. So Elizabeth Elliot and her friends get together and they head back to Ecuador, back to the rainforest. And over the course of several weeks and months of years, that entire tribe gives their life to Jesus Christ and is completely changed. What kind of amazingly strong heart does that? Let me show you another picture. This guy right here, his name's Steve Saint. He's the son of Nate Saint, who flew that plane down and got killed. The Saint family decided to go over and live with that tribe. And this guy, as a member of that tribe, adopted Steve as his adopted grandson. And they grew in their love for one another. And Min Kai is his name, made several trips over to America to watch Steve and his children grow and go through important life stages. This guy right here drove the spear through his dad's heart. I know this is like bringing you down. I know this is like, man, that's just crazy to ask. But I want to show you a picture of what an amazingly strong heart can do when it is convinced that the resurrection really happened, when it is convinced that what happens in this life matters, when it is convinced that God has the power to change. What I want us to recognize is this truth, okay? The strength of your heart, this is the truth. The strength of your heart is directly correlated to your attitude towards those who have wronged you. The strength of your heart is it's not related to how you treat the people who are like you. It's not related to how you treat the people who you already love and like. That's the light lifting. That's the soft lifting. The heavy lifting is how you treat the people who have wronged you. That's where your hearts grow strong. And Jesus needed disciples with strong, strong hearts. And so, the thing that I want to offer you as we leave this part of the sermon is that we want to detox resentment. I don't know what it is in your life that you are dealing with. I don't know who it is in your life that you're dealing with. But we got to start handing that away, believing that the God of the universe, the God of the resurrection, has the power to change that situation. And again, I don't have you a bunch of steps. But I will tell you one thing that I heard one person teach me one time. If you got somebody who you're struggling with, start praying for them. I mean, that's where Jesus starts. Pray for those who persecute you, right? Just begin to pray for them. Over the next 2 weeks as we head to Easter, lift up those prayers. Let's go on to the second thing, and this will be it. The second thing that Jesus wants to teach us. Luke chapter 6, 37 to 38. Do not judge, and you will not be judged. Do not condemn, and you will not be condemned. Forgive, and you will be forgiven. Give, and it will be given to you. A good measure, pressed down, shaken together, running over, will be poured into your lap. For with the measure you use, it will be measured to you. Let's talk about that idea that he gives right there, about the idea of the good measure, because that's not a terminology that we are very familiar with in our life. He talks this idea of press it down, shake it together, run it over, okay? So the idea here is in in this culture, when they would go to the marketplace, they would take their container, they'd take their bag, they'd take their cup, they'd take their bucket, and then they would need to buy grain or flour or seeds or something like that. They would take it to the merchant, and the merchant they could handle this a couple different ways. They could take the measure, they could do the scoop, they could throw it in there and hand it back, and that'd be it. But that was not what Jesus is talking about. What Jesus is saying is take a good measure, throw it in there, then shake it, press it, run it over. Pour a few more scoops on till it is running over. Press it down, shake it, run it over. Like, say that with me. Press it down, shake it, run it over. It's like there's a rhythm to it. Press it down, shake it, run it over. It could be a hip-hop song. Come on, right? We can make up a dance to that. Because I want this to stick into your mind. We've got to move beyond the idea of mere fairness to the world of grace. We see this in our lives, right? When you go through the drive-thru and you get that drink and you start to pull out and you look and there's like 2 inches and they didn't give you a good measure, right? There's like 2 inches of empty space where they didn't fill it up. You're like, nuh-uh, we put that in reverse. You top that off, right? And when we see it the opposite way, we see it at Five Guys. Y'all like Five Guys burgers and fries? Yes? The reason we love the place is because when you order fries and you open up your bag, you see the little cup that is the small, but then the fries are falling out of it and filling up the bag. And you're like, that's why I come to Five Guys. Because they give a good, generous measure. They move beyond fairness to the realm of grace. That's what Jesus is talking about. But here's something that we got to deal with. Here's something that we got to deal with too. What is said here, do not judge. Do not judge is not don't use judgment. Okay, we got to deal with that straight out of the bag. Because a lot of people see this and they think, you're going to be so judgmental because you're saying you have to not hang out with me or something like that. Do not judge doesn't mean that, there are times in your life that you have to separate yourself from people who are toxic. Okay? That's not being judgmental. That's using good judgment. Sometimes you got to separate yourself from people who are toxic. Sometimes you got to separate yourself from situations where they're doing stuff, habits, things that you're trying to break, and you need to move away from that. That's not being judgmental. That is using good judgment, okay? So when Jesus says, do not judge, he's not saying don't just stop using judgment, just accept everything and do everything. He's saying, what kind of spirit are you going to do it with? What kind of attitude are you going to do it with? Because here's the deal. What we know and we see in our lives, that when you're growing in good judgment, that comes with the potential to be judgmental, does it not? We see this all the time with people who are getting real serious about their food, right? I'm keto. I'm paleo, right? We don't do beans. They're trying to get really good, have really good judgment when it comes to their food, but then they just start to get annoying, right? Because they're growing and their perspective on their food, and you're just like, man, you were so much more fun when you ate cake, right? Because they're developing, in their desire to have good judgment, they're becoming judgmental. It comes with the territory, and that happens morally. You guys sitting here in this space, you are here because you believe in God, or maybe you're interested in God, but something more that every single one of you want is you want God to give you wisdom for life, right? You want God to grow your ability to have discernment and good judgment. Well, guys, with the territory comes the potential to be judgmental. And here's the problem. The problem is we often act in a way that eliminates the possibility for our desired outcome. I know that's a bunch of words, but let me explain it this way. Our desired outcome when it comes with the people in our lives is we want to get along. We want to see their lives change. We want to have influence, right? That's our desired income. The desired income. No, we're not talking about that. Outcome. That's the desired outcome that we want. But when we come at them with a condescending, rude attitude, it's not going to happen. I've told my wife and talked to my kids, there's three kinds of people that get to be condescending and rude. Superstar athletes, superstar recording artists, and people who control the money. They get a pass for a really, really long time. They get to be condescending and rude. Now, eventually it catches up. And they all three create all kinds of messes in their lives. But they get a pass for a long time. The rest of us, we got to genuinely be humble. We got to genuinely respect people. We got to genuinely want what's best for the people around us. And so my challenge to you over the next couple of weeks, when it comes to your heart and what you got going on in there, is to detox a condescending, judgmental perspective. There's one more little passage that I want to read to us out of here, because here's the thing. When Jesus is sitting here with his disciples and he's talking to them about their hearts and what kind of heart they have to follow him, ultimately he wants them to have great impact. He wants them to experience God's power in their own lives, and he wants them to give that to others who are around them. And so he closes things out with this. Luke chapter 6, 43 through 45. No good tree bears bad fruit, nor does a bad tree bear good fruit. Each tree is recognized by its own fruit. People don't pick figs from thorn bushes. Back then, that was a really good thing. You may not like figs, but they were really popular back then. So just choose a fruit that you like. Oranges. They don't pick figs from thorn bushes or grapes from briars. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in his heart, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in his heart. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. You want to have impact in your life. You want to see God moving. You want to have power, but you got to recognize, if you want to have influence with the people who are around you, recognize that if you are a thorn bush, if you're carrying around resentment and a condescending, judgmental attitude, if you're a thorn bush, no one wants what you have to offer. It doesn't matter how many scriptures you have memorized. It doesn't matter how wise you are. It doesn't matter how much life experience you have. If you are a thorn bush, nobody wants what you have to offer. And ultimately, Jesus wanted his disciples to have great impact. Just like a seed dictates what kind of bush springs forth, your heart dictates how you are going to know the power of the resurrection in your own life. How are you going to share it, and how your life is going to matter now. And so as we close this part out, I just ask you, what's coming out of your heart? What's been the impact of that spiritual weight going on with you? Little story as we close. Another theme park kind of deal. My wife and I, after I finished seminary, we went to Disney World. and we spent like 3 days in Disney World. And one day we were walking around Animal Kingdom, just the two of us walking along, and we saw this little girl coming, and she had a sunburn, and she was sweating, and her hair was going everywhere. And I heard her dad talking real sternly with her. He said to her, "Honey, this is not the kind of vacation where you relax and have fun. This is the kind of vacation where you work hard and have fun." Okay? It was great. But here's the thing. The little girl's shirt was bright, and it said real big on it, "It's all about me." And she was dealing with the reality that it ain't. If we're going to start to detox this stuff in our life, if we're going to start to recognize the power of the resurrection in our lives, we got to learn that lesson. That's hard. It's not necessarily all about us, and it's not necessarily all about others. It's all about Jesus. It's all about inviting him into our lives and letting him have the impact that he can have in our lives. Our invitation is that you consider what it is you need to detox in your life. What can we pray about? How is it we can give maybe more of what you're holding on to for yourself to Christ and what he wants to do in your heart? We have an invitation room set up. If you go through the doors and you keep walking down the hallway, if there's anything that you've heard in this message today that you want to talk about, then after the service, I ask that you just start walking and keep walking down that hallway, and you'll find me in the multipurpose room, and we can lift that up and we can pray. But before we go into communion, we actually are going to get to see the picture of someone giving themselves away and inviting more of Jesus into them through the wonderful power, the wonderful picture of baptism. So I ask that you turn your attention to the screen.
Well, over the last 19 years when I first started with the First Christian Church, I moved here at the end of October of last year, and I wanted to continue to be involved with the church. I'm originally a Catholic, so I visited a local Catholic church, and then by accident I found Jefferson City Christian Church. And the first day I was here, I felt this bond, this cohesiveness, family atmosphere that in the back of my mind, I said this could be the place that I'm looking for and that I need. I've been lucky to be involved with Jefferson City Christian Church. I've had some one-on-one meetings with Luke Emmert on off time, and to me, we've been able to put icing on the cake other than the Sunday services and trying to do outside activities for the church through recruiting or helping as a manager of the company I work for now. We have situations where people have issues, and I've asked him for advice, so I've been able to serve as a counselor at work as well. It's given me a whole new meaning, so I have a different understanding, a true appreciation of what the word means. As a manager at work, I tell people I don't use the G word because it intimidates people, but I do conduct myself in the G fashion so that the people that really know the value of the word will know that I'm a true Christian. Well, I mean, there's, again, a lot of people. I can start with my wife. She's the one that we met in November of 2000, and she was a practicing Christian, and we've instilled those values in our 16-year-old daughter. So, she's an integral part of who I am today. My wife and my daughter were baptized 3 years ago at the church that we were going to in California, and they wanted me to get baptized too, but I wasn't ready for it. I'm not one of those persons that's going to do something just because somebody else does it. I want to do it when I'm ready to do it, and I sincerely believe that I'm ready for it because I sincerely believe in passion. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to give you 100%. So if I have any doubt, I'm not going to do it. Spiritually and mentally and physically, I know that I'm ready to make this commitment and go forward and represent Jesus Christ and what it really means to be baptized. Obviously, through my other religion, I've been through first baptism, first communion, confirmation, but I think more it was like it's an obligation versus, do it when you really feel that you're ready for it, and making that, the key word to me is commitment. And so I talked to Luke last week, and Luke assumed that I was already baptized, and I never told him. And then last week when we had the first meetings here in the hall, I told him I want to get baptized, and he had the deer in the headlight look, and he says, "You're not baptized?" And I said, "No, but I'm ready for it." My name is Jose Ruiz, and I want to follow Jesus.
You think you know a guy, right? No, but we have gotten to know each other over the last couple of months. And Jose, when he says he's a driven man, when he says he's in it for 100%, that's who this man is. He intensely loves his wife and his daughter 100%. He intensely loves his work 100%. And you know what? As I've gotten to know Jose over the last couple of months, he loves the Lord Jesus Christ with all of his heart, with all of his soul, with all of his mind. And thank you. Thank you for giving me the honor to be standing here with you today as you take another step in your walk with God. I know that your family is so proud of you for making this decision. And I want to say that I am proud of you as well.
Thank you.
So as we go through this time, I want to ask the good confession. I believe that Jesus is the Christ,
That Jesus is the Christ,
the Son of the living God,
the Son of the living God,
and I accept him
and I accept him
as my Lord and personal Savior.
as my Lord and personal Savior.
Based on your commitment, I now baptize you in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit for the forgiveness of sin and the gift of the Holy Spirit.
That's a fun way to kick off communion, isn't it? And communion is this picture where we remember how and why that's so special. Paul tells us that when we are baptized, we're united with Christ in his death. And just like Christ was risen from the grave, and as we rise out of that water, we too will rise out of the grave. We rise out of that grave, we rise out of that water with new life. And so I just ask that as the servers come forward and we take this meal together, you remember the life that God